There's a split second, a quiet inner choice, when someone challenges you, questions you, accuses you, or tries to put your worth on trial. And in that instant, most people fall back on what they were conditioned to do. They defend themselves. I didn't mean it. That wasn't my intention. You're misunderstanding me. I swear I'm not like that. It feels righteous, fair, logical. But to Machiavelli, that very moment is the point you lose everything, because the instant you defend yourself, you're already admitting you were weak enough to feel the need. And in the game of power, perception is the entire battlefield. If they catch you flinching, they don't see someone misunderstood. They see prey. This is the savage law Machiavelli grasped before the rest. The man who defends himself lowers himself. The man who refuses forces the world to defend him instead. Let's be clear about something. Defending yourself almost never persuades anyone. What it does is move the weight of control away from you, because when you justify, you're already playing on their turf. You're accepting their frame. Without realizing it, you're saying, "You have the right to question me." And once you hand them that power, they seize the narrative. Even if you're right, you still look wrong, because only the powerless rush to explain. The strong let silence sting. They allow the accusation to hang unanswered, because they know the true strategy is this. Flip the attack into a reflection. Make them question themselves. Make them appear irrational. Make them look petty, bitter, unstable. Because the first one to break the silence often loses grip of the frame. And Machiavelli knew that whoever holds the frame dictates the ending. Most defend themselves out of a hunger to be understood. They think if they just say enough, explain enough, repeat enough, the truth will rescue them. But that is an emotional need, not a strategy. You don't want understanding, you want control. Understanding is for counselors, control is for rulers. And power does not come from being understood, it comes from being feared, respected, and unreachable. So when someone labels you arrogant, cold, selfish, manipulative, and you blurt out, "No, that's not true," you've already surrendered. Because now you're reacting, now you're showing you care, now you've handed them the advantage. And when you do that, you give up your sharpest Machiavellian edge. Mystery. Think back to the most powerful figures you've ever faced. Not the loudest, not the most adored. The ones who wielded silence as a weapon. The ones who made you second-guess yourself just with their stare. The ones who, when attacked, never moved. Machiavelli would whisper this truth. He who explains yields. He who stays silent forces others to imagine, and they nearly always exaggerate his strength. That's the essence of the game. When you refuse to respond, they grow uneasy. They begin to doubt their own words. They scan for reassurance and find none. Suddenly, their confidence shrinks while yours multiplies, because you've done the one thing emotional people cannot stand. You force them into conversation with themselves. And that's how power flips. You let their accusation collapse under its own emptiness. Now take it further. You walk into a gathering. Someone throws shade, subtle or sharp. Maybe a jab at your success, your nature, your history. Eyes turn, waiting for your comeback, and here's the masterstroke. Say nothing. No defense, no counterpunch, no smirk, just composed, unshakable calm. In that instant, you stand untouchable, because the entire room is now thinking, why didn't he respond? What does he know that we don't? Is he above this? Did that attack just strengthen him? You've reversed the social order, because the crowd isn't studying the insult. They're studying you. And silence, when paired with presence, shouts louder than any explanation could. Machiavelli knew it well. He didn't only study politics. He studied human nature, and he mastered one timeless fact. Power isn't in the words you deliver. It's in the words you could deliver, but choose to keep unsaid. Now here's the most ruthless move of all. Sometimes you don't just dismiss the accusation, you flip it. Someone calls you manipulative, you give a slight smile, glance past them and simply say, if that's how you see it. Not defensive, not regretful, just steady, detached calm. What happens next? They freeze because they expected a battle. They expected you to twist, to prove, to sweat. Instead, they're left clutching their own blade. That's the moment guilt shifts to their side. They start to wonder if they crossed a line, if they made themselves look foolish, if they're the one who seems insecure now. And the truth is, they are. You just turned the strike back on them without even lifting your hand. There comes a point where silence is not heavy for you, but unbearable for them. That's when everything reverses. They thought they stood as the judge. Now they're the one exposed, craving validation. And you've become something far stronger than innocent. You've become untouchable. Machiavelli grasped what few ever will. Words are not tools for truth, they are tools for misdirection. And when someone throws shade, whether slight or direct, what they want is to lure you into the fog. They want to drown you in emotional defense, because the more you explain, the less firm you appear. So instead, leave the air empty and watch. They stretch it out. They repeat. They start looking unsteady, emotional, fragile. You remain silent, yet now they the one on trial, because the crowd isn't studying the words being traded. They're studying who holds their ground and who crumbles. That is the essence of social power, and it doesn't come from being correct. It comes from being untouchable. Picture a business meeting. Someone undermines you with a sly comment, says, "I'm not sure that idea is practical," or "he's always coming up with these bold schemes." They want your reaction. They want to watch you defend, sweat and shrink. What do most people do? They lean forward, they explain, they justify, they overprove, they bleed nerves. The room senses it. But the Machiavellian player, he leans back. He waits. Maybe he lets a faint smile touch his face. And if he does speak, it isn't defense, it's redirection. Let's hear your idea then. Now the pressure flips. Now the challenger has to show his hand. The whole room shifts its gaze. He's exposed, he's sweating, he's the one under test, because silence from the assured is a silent accusation. It diminishes people without you ever needing to strike. In love or close relationships, this weapon is sharper still. Imagine your partner sighs, "You don't care about me anymore." The ordinary response is panic. They rush into words, into reassurance, into endless defenses, and by doing so, they accept the emotional script handed to them. But the Machiavellian method plays colder. You don't argue. You don't dismiss. You let the charge linger. You let them hear their own voice echo, and then with a steady tone you say, "That's not how I see it." Short, calm, no over-explaining, no neediness. And instantly they start to question themselves. Was I too dramatic? Did I overreact? Because in that moment, you're holding the one power that matters most, control of the emotional rhythm. And whoever sets the rhythm owns the frame. There's an even deeper weapon, and it cuts colder than the rest. Don't just stay calm in the face of attack. Vanish. Someone hurls an insult, you don't answer, you don't respond, you don't even acknowledge, but you don't block either. You let your silence and absence hang like a mirror. You let them sit inside the emptiness of being disregarded. This shatters people in two sharp ways. They realize you didn't even consider them worth a reply. They begin spinning stories in their own heads, and most of the time it shatters their balance. Why? Because the ordinary person feeds on emotional reassurance. Even in conflict, when you strip that away, they crumble, they spiral out, they post more, they whisper to others, they set traps for a reply, and with each attempt they look smaller, more desperate, more unstable, all while you stay motionless. And that's when the victory lands, not because you proved anything, but because they unraveled themselves in their chase for your reaction. Here's where it sharpens into mastery. Instead of defending when accused, turn their attack into proof of their weakness. Someone calls you arrogant. Strange how confidence unsettles people. Someone says you're manipulative. Only those who can't influence others say that. Someone calls you fake. People always say that when they stop getting what they wanted. You don't just deny, you twist it back into their insecurity, and suddenly they're scrambling to defend themselves. That's not just a reversal, that's a power throw. You use their momentum to make them collapse under their own weight. Machiavelli would name this the turn of the blade. Don't clash sword to shield. Let the aggressor fall on the weapon they swung. Society teaches you to guard your reputation, to justify, to clean your name. But Machiavelli saw the snare. He understood that the moment you chase innocence, you've already confessed to guilt. The true operator never takes that bait. He projects composure too firm to rattle, a stance too high to bend, a certainty too solid to explain. And in time, those who tried to tear him down look unhinged, bitter, envious, weak. Because the harder you defend, the more it seems you must. But the less you respond, the more dangerous they assume you are. And it's that assumption where power breeds. Most assume power means proving yourself, proving your rightness, proving you're not what they say, proving you rise above their narrative. Machiavelli would grin at that, because the instant you prove, you've bowed to their judgment. And when you bow, you've handed them the leash. Imagine you're in a group, a dinner, a boardroom, someone lobs a jab in public. You always act like you know it all. Or, oh, he's always like this. Guess humility isn't his style. What does the crowd usually do? They stiffen, they giggle nervously. Or worse, they try to smooth it over, they explain, they laugh along, thinking they saved face. But what they really did was confirm the blow landed. Now all eyes are on the defense, and that spotlight alone makes the jab feel true. Here's how the Machiavellian moves. He pauses, he lets silence stretch 2 beats. He scans the room not with hostility, but with calm amusement. Then, if he speaks, it's brief, cool, and dismissive. You seem emotional today, or interesting perspective, or nothing at all, but a steady, unshaken stare. The outcome never changes. The attacker shifts in their seat. They fumble, they hunt for allies, they rush to explain their own joke, and the heat of the room swings against them, because your stillness announced louder than words ever could. You were never on trial. They were. Online, the game accelerates. Posts, comments, mentions, private digs, bait after bait for reaction. And here's the truth Machiavelli would etch into your mind. In the public square, silence reads as guilt unless your silence radiates power. So here's the tactic. When attacked digitally, don't justify, don't explain, reframe. You don't touch the claim. You send the energy back into the audience. Example, someone calls you toxic or manipulative. Instead of posting a pleading defense or long explanation, you post, "People always call you dangerous when they can't control you." What just happened? You didn't defend. You transformed the accusation into a badge of strength. Now they look bitter, you look unmoved, and the crowd starts to wonder who truly holds the reins. That isn't damage control, that's seizing the frame. Let's refine it further. There are 3 weapons to use in place of defending yourself. Silence, the foundation. Cold, steady, leaving the accuser standing in their own echo. Deflection. Twist the frame without ever bowing to the attack. Precision cuts. Short, sharp lines that slice the argument dead on impact. For example, someone says, "You're full of yourself." You answer, "Confidence bothers the insecure." They say, "You're fake." You answer, "I don't owe you my authenticity." They say, "You think you're better than everyone." You answer, "No, I just refuse to think like everyone." These aren't defenses. They are declarations of status. They don't say, "I'm innocent." They say, "You can't reach me." That's the essence. The Machiavellian doesn't beg to be seen as noble. He embraces being seen as ruthless and stands taller for it. The moment you stop defending, your opponents shift into chaos. They unravel because they came ready for a duel, but instead they're swinging into fog. They escalate, they shout louder, they exaggerate, they bear their own weakness. And the higher their drama climbs, the higher your stature grows in the eyes of onlookers. Why? Because you've maneuvered them into performing their own downfall. And that's the Machiavellian masterstroke. You don't break your enemies. You let their fixation on you break them. People think misunderstanding is the risk, but predictability is the true danger. The misunderstood man carries mystery. The predictable man is a puppet. Those who always rush to explain are seen as needy. Those who stay calmly misread are seen as dangerous. Machiavelli knew this truth: better to be feared than loved, if both are not possible. And beyond that, better to be puzzling than predictable. Because when they're puzzled, they hesitate, they watch, they calculate, and that gives you control of the stage. Now let's tear away the last illusion. You don't need a good reputation to rise. You need a strong one. The man with a good reputation is expected to be pleasant, agreeable, safe. The man with a strong reputation may not be liked, may not be trusted, but no one strikes at him lightly. That's the outcome of never defending yourself. Your reputation stops being about belief and starts being about fear of your next move. That's the reversal of power. You abandon the chase for approval. You cultivate an aura that makes others tread carefully. Because even your silence feels chosen, and every action you don't take becomes one they imagine. The highest stage isn't silence, it's aura. A presence so centered, so untouchable, that accusations dissolve before they ever land. And this isn't about being numb. It's about being unshakable by design. Because when you've trained yourself never to defend, never to explain, never to chase validation, you cross a threshold. A threshold where your very existence is the defense. That's the point where power becomes effortless. Think of the rare few who never explain. They don't rant online. They don't set the record straight. They don't spar with critics, and yet they command greater respect. Why? Because silence under fire creates legend. It sparks speculation. And when the human mind finds no explanation, it fills the gap with strength. It assumes you must be dangerous. You must know something they don't. You must be so certain of yourself that not even a challenge makes you flinch. And that kind of certainty, that silent confidence, is what draws people to you. Machiavelli never cared about being seen as good. He cared about being in control, and the one who refuses to defend himself always controls perception, even when surrounded by lies. Here's the paradox. The more you explain, the weaker you appear. Because when you argue on your own behalf, no one feels the need to step in. But if you stay calm, silent, untouched, people begin to defend you themselves. They say that wasn't fair. He didn't deserve that. Why are you still attacking him when he hasn't even responded? Suddenly, they become your shield. And what's stronger than defending yourself is letting others do it for you without ever asking. That is Machiavellian leverage. Let the crowd fight your battles while you rise above the noise. Now, you're not only respected, you're elevated. But this doesn't happen overnight. It's built like a fortress, stone by stone, by practicing restraint, by choosing silence instead of reaction, by explaining less than what is demanded. Begin here. Never correct an insult that was designed to provoke you. Let it echo, let it fade. Your silence shows the room it didn't even touch you. Answer indirect shots with calm curiosity, not offense. Is that how you see it? Said with perfect composure. It drains the force of their attack. Use short closings instead of defenses. Noted. Okay, think what you will. Time will show. Each phrase ends the scene instead of opening another debate. Study your expression, your posture, your gaze. The Machiavellian man never twitches, never stiffens, never reveals. Stillness becomes his armor. And the more still you remain while others lose control, the more your unseen power spreads. When they can't figure out how to provoke you, they start to fear you. Because unreadable is more dangerous than unpredictable. You become a mirror reflecting their own instability back at them. Machiavelli would remind you. The most dangerous man is not the one who strikes first, but the one who never needs to. You'll reach a point where attacks fade away. Not because you fought them, but because everyone knows they've already lost before they begin. Your very presence says, I don't play defense. I let others collapse while trying to touch me. There's a difference between strength and immunity. Strength still shakes, still reacts, still bleeds. Even while fighting back, immunity doesn't even acknowledge the blow. That's the Machiavellian standard. You don't win arguments, you erase them by refusing to participate. Because once you stop defending yourself, people stop believing you belong on trial. You're no longer on their level. You've stepped outside the court of public opinion, and the only verdict that matters is your own. From then on, you don't live in defense. You live in definition. You define your stance, you define your silence, you define your presence, and people feel it. They sense the certainty in your eyes, the calm strength in your body, the danger in your quiet. You are no longer resisting. You are commanding. That's when the atmosphere changes. The voices soften. Your enemies hesitate. Your name carries weight, not because you fought for it, but because you never justified it. Never defending yourself doesn't mean you never speak. It means you speak only when it tilts the balance of power. When you open your mouth, it should feel like a move, not a reply. Because every time you stay silent, every time you stand still while the world spins, you become what they can never control, a man who answers to no one. A force that bends the room without lifting a hand. A presence that rewrites the rules without saying a word. And in that silence, you are not just untouchable, you are unforgettable.